All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to tackle a question that I think is kind of fundamental to living thoughtfully.
Okay.
It's how much can morality realistically ask of you?
Yeah.
And I think this is something that probably everyone has experienced in their life at some point,
Yeah.
where you kind of feel like you're at this, maybe a crossroads or you're faced with a decision and doing the right thing
Yeah.
feels like climbing, a moral Mount Everest,
Yeah, absolutely. It's that tension point where, you have this sense of what you should do
Yeah,
ethically, what seems right,
right.
but it would require a really significant sacrifice or
Yeah.
for you to give up something that you really value.
Right,
So that's what we're diving into today, this whole idea of moral demandingness.
right.
When those two things are in tension with each other, how far does that obligation stretch?
Right. And, for this exploration, we've got a whole range of philosophical viewpoints to draw on, which is great. And each of these kind of grapples with this tension in a slightly different way. So,
Right.
so I think, in a way, it's like sharpening our own philosophical toolkit
Yeah.
because, like I said, we all face these choices.
Right.
So I guess let's start with just the core problem of demandingness itself.
Yeah, so one thing to consider right off the bat is that many moral theories,
Okay.
especially those that aim at maximizing overall well-being,
Yeah.
end up sort of bumping into this problem of demanding too much from us as individuals.
Okay.
And standard consequentialism is probably the most well-known example of this.
Right.
So, for example, as Shelley Kagan has highlighted,
Yeah.
it can seem to permit actions that most of us just find intuitively wrong,
Yeah.
like sacrificing one innocent life to save two others,
Right.
and that's often called the permitting too much objection.
Yeah, that's a very vivid
It's it.
thought experiment that really makes you think.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the permitting too much.
Right.
But then you have this demanding too much side of it.
Right? So consequentialism seems to imply
Yeah.
that we should constantly be striving to produce the absolute best outcome,
Yeah.
no matter the cost to our own lives.
Right, so you can never really relax.
Right.
Because there's always a better
Ye-
thing you could be doing.
Relaxing evening that you were looking forward to.
Right.
That might actually be morally questionable
Yeah.
if your time could be spent doing more good elsewhere.
Right.
Maybe sending aid overseas becomes a higher priority than helping your neighbor with their groceries,
Yeah.
if it saves more lives.
Right.
So it can feel like a moral marathon with no finish line in sight.
Right. And this really gets, I think, to
Yeah.
Bernard Williams'
Yeah.
famous critique of this, the George the chemist example.
Yeah, right? So in this example,
Yeah.
George,
Right.
objects to developing chemical weapons
Okay.
on moral grounds.
Yeah.
But if he refuses the job,
Yeah.
someone else, maybe someone less scrupulous, will likely take it.
Yeah.
And so consequentialism seems to suggest that George should actually take the job
Yeah.
to sort of minimize the overall harm.
Minimize the harm, right?
But what Williams argues is that this would demand that George betray his core beliefs, his sense of self,
Right.
for the sake of this kind of impersonal moral calculation.
Right. So you're giving up your own.
Exactly.
Mm.
And he calls this a real pressure on George's integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and that's something that you can see played out in lots
Okay.
of different ways. It's not just about this kind of dramatic scenario,
Right.
There are lots of everyday decisions where we kind of feel this tug.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're thinking about like, am I morally obligated to donate to charity until I'm just as badly off as the people I'm trying to help?
Yeah.
Like where is that line between like being a morally good person
Right.
and just being exceptionally kind,
Yeah. And that's something that I'm sure a lot of our listeners
Right.
think
Yeah.
about with their own charitable giving.
Yeah. And so just to kind of broaden this out, I think it's also important to remember that
Yeah.
this issue isn't just limited to
Right.
consequentialist views.
Right.
Even non-consequentialist theories can lead to demanding obligations.
Exactly.
So if you look at something like W.D. Ross's,
Yeah.
which has a big emphasis on these kind of firm negative duties,
Right.
don't lie, don't kill,
Right.
can still end up being demanding because Ross also believed that we have a duty to maximize good when those negative duties aren't in conflict.
Right.
So even if you don't have that like permitting too much problem,
Right.
the constant moral pressure to kind of
Yeah.
do the most good
Right.
can still be there.
Can still be really overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to point out that even those negative duties,
Right.
which seem kind of straightforward, can
Yeah.
be really demanding,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you think about that classic life or death dilemma,
Yeah.
where the only way to save your own life is to intentionally take an innocent life,
Right.
a strict do not kill principle would demand that you just accept your own death.
Right. That you just let yourself die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, you know,
It's huge.
an immense personal cost.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of gets to that question for all of us listening. Like, how do you weigh those demands
Yeah.
when you're actually trying to, you know, live this out, trying to act as a philosopher in your own life?
Yeah. And this brings up a really interesting point about kind of the nature of these moral objections.
Oh, good.
You know, some have argued,
Yeah.
and David Sobel's a good example of this,
Okay.
that the demandingness objection and the permitting too much objection
Yeah.
might not be completely separate.
Okay.
They might not be distinct issues,
Okay.
because both of them often turn on this distinction
Yeah.
between actively causing harm versus simply allowing harm to occur.
Okay.
So, you know, the case of sacrificing my own life,
Yeah.
I'm actively causing my death. But if I don't intervene to save others, then I'm just allowing their deaths.
Right.
But as we've seen, demandingness can also involve allowing harm to yourself.
Right.
Right. So a duty not to kill, even to save yourself,
Yeah.
that can be demanding. And some people find that demand just excessive.
Right. So it's really about, are there times when it's okay to put your own well-being
Exactly.
kind of above this
Yeah.
moral obligation to maximize the good?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the core question here is, are we always morally required to maximize good in the world?
Right.
Or are there times when it's actually ethically permissible,
Right.
or even,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
to prioritize our own well-being or our own goals or projects?
Right. Yeah. It's a tough question.
Yeah, it is. And because this problem is so significant in moral philosophy,
Okay.
philosophers haven't just ignored it.
Right.
There have been various attempts either to argue that morality isn't actually as demanding as it appears,
Okay.
or to try to develop moral frameworks that are just inherently less demanding.
Okay, so let's look at some of those.
Right.
Let's look at the arguing that it isn't as demanding.
Okay, so some consequentialists, like Sidgwick,
Yeah.
have pointed out that in the real world,
Yeah.
we actually often achieve the greatest good by focusing our efforts more locally.
Locally.
Yeah, like on our families and our immediate communities.
Okay.
Because we have a deeper understanding of their needs, and our actions are just more likely to be effective in those closer circles.
Right. That makes sense practically.
Right.
I mean, it seems like how most people live, right?
Right.
But I think it's interesting that it doesn't really address those like really stark hypothetical scenarios
Right.
where you can kind of see the better outcome, right?
Right.
So if it really is a choice between, you know, saving yourself or saving two strangers,
Right.
and the consequences are very clear,
Yeah.
you know, then it still feels really demanding to have to choose the two strangers over yourself.
Yeah, you're right. The theoretical challenge still remains.
Hmm.
Even if in practice,
Right.
things feel a bit more manageable.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea of indirect or two-level consequentialism.
Okay.
And the idea here, and this has been championed by folks like Bales and Hare and Parfit,
Okay.
is that while the ultimate moral truth might be about maximizing overall good,
Right.
the most effective way for us to actually act in our daily lives
Okay.
isn't to constantly be calculating and aiming at the best outcome in every situation.
Right.
Instead, we should adopt and follow these simpler moral rules
Okay.
that, if everyone accepted and followed them,
Yeah.
would lead to the best consequences in the long run.
Okay, so it's like a set of rules.
Yeah, like keep your promises or don't lie.
Yeah.
These might just be less demanding to follow
Right.
in every specific instance
Okay.
than trying to always do the optimal calculation.
Okay, so it's like saying the best overall strategy for maximizing good
Right.
isn't to constantly be aiming at it directly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess this kind of makes sense. I mean, it's like, you know, driving. We have traffic laws,
Right.
and they might not be perfect in every single situation,
Yeah.
but overall they prevent chaos
Right.
and they, you know, promote safety.
Right.
But even then,
Yeah.
if those underlying rules are really demanding,
Right.
it doesn't really help, right?
That's right. That's a crucial limitation.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that both of these approaches,
Yeah.
they often focus on what might be considered the subjectively right thing to do.
Okay.
So what you, as an individual,
Yeah.
with limited knowledge and cognitive capacity,
Yeah.
should believe is the right course of action
Okay.
or the best decision-making process.
Right.
But objectively,
Yeah.
from a purely consequentialist standpoint,
Yeah.
any act that doesn't ultimately maximize good in that instance
Right.
might still be considered objectively wrong.
Right.
So some critics find this gap between subjective permissibility and objective wrongness
Yeah.
to be problematic, and still not really addressing the core of the demandingness objection,
Okay.
which is, are we actually permitted to not make these sacrifices?
Right.
Or are we just supposed to think and act as if we are?
Right. Yeah. So I guess this is a little bit about what feels right versus what actually is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you have this, I guess, almost complete opposite approach
Right.
of just accepting that morality is inherently demanding.
Yeah.
And that maybe it's our fault that we're uncomfortable with that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So some, like Susan Wolf, have argued that
Yeah.
our resistance to these demanding moral duties might just be a way for us,
Yeah.
especially those of us in more privileged positions,
Right.
to kind of rationalize holding on to our advantages
Yeah.
and avoid making the sacrifices needed to really help those less fortunate.
Right.
So in a more theoretical version of that argument,
Yeah.
it suggested that pretty much all moral views
Yeah.
acknowledge at least some duty to promote good. And so any attempt to weaken that duty
Yeah.
needs a really strong philosophical justification.
Right.
And maybe that justification just isn't there.
Right. So it flips the burden of proof, right?
Exactly.
It's not the demanding views that have to justify themselves.
Right.
It's the less demanding views that have to justify why they're less demanding.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that is a real challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's saying that. If
Yeah.
we're feeling like something's too demanding,
Yeah.
maybe we're the ones
Maybe
with the flawed moral compass.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
It makes you really think about your own
Our
values.
motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have this, persuasive strategy of appealing to our moral intuitions
Right.
in these really clear cases. So,
Yeah.
so I think Peter Singer's
Yeah.
example of the drowning child is a good example of this.
Yeah, a classic example.
Yeah. So just to lay it out there, you see a child drowning in a shallow pond.
Right.
You could easily wade in and save them, but doing so would ruin your expensive shoes.
Right.
Almost everyone agrees you're obligated to save the child,
Right.
even at the cost of your shoes.
Yeah.
And so the argument then is that
Yeah.
situations like widespread famine relief,
Yeah.
where people are suffering and dying from preventable causes,
Right.
aren't fundamentally different in any morally relevant way
Right. Yeah.
from that drowning child scenario.
Right.
So we have a similar duty to help,
Yeah.
even if the costs are, more substantial than a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And so this, I think, really challenges our consistency.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that always comes up with these sorts of comparisons
Yeah.
is the issue of proximity.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the immediacy and directness of that child drowning in front of you
Yeah.
versus the more abstract suffering
Right.
of people far away.
Right. Yeah.
And there's also that sense of like personal agency.
Yeah. I
Like,
can immediately help this child.
yeah.
Whereas with the global issue like famine,
Right,
it's like,
yeah.
well, there are so many potential helpers.
Yeah.
My individual action
Yeah.
feels much smaller.
Yeah. So how much do those
No.
intuitive differences
Yeah.
matter morally?
Well, those are precisely the points that critics will often bring up
Okay.
in response to the drowning child case.
Okay.
So, for example, Shelley Kagan, again,
Yeah.
and people like Zofia Agneski and Fiona Willard,
Okay.
they've all argued that
Yeah.
the immediate presence of the drowning child
Yeah.
triggers this specific and very strong duty of rescue,
Okay.
which is morally stronger
Okay.
than this more general duty we might have
Yeah.
of beneficence to those in need far away.
Okay.
They might ask something like, what if you were on your way to make a significant donation
Okay.
that, would save 2 lives in another country,
Yeah.
and on your way, you encounter a single child drowning?
If our moral obligation is solely about maximizing the number of lives saved,
Right.
shouldn't you just go make the donation
Yeah.
and let that one child drown?
Yeah.
But many people have a very strong intuition
Yeah.
that you should rescue that child right in front of you.
Yeah.
So that suggests that
Yeah.
the demandingness of our moral duties
Yeah.
might depend on factors like proximity and the immediacy of the need.
Right. Okay.
And our perceived personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It really forces us to consider what aspects of a situation truly hold moral weight.
Yeah, and it really gets to that question of
Yeah,
how much should we be letting our intuitions guide our moral decision making?
exactly.
Yeah. So it seems like we keep coming back to this tension
Right.
between, morality pushing us one way
Yeah.
and our own kind of inclinations and limitations
Right.
pulling us another way. So if just saying that morality is not as demanding as it seems, or insisting that we have to just grit our teeth and accept those really strong demands, if
Yeah.
those don't work,
Right.
then what are some of the ways that philosophers have actually tried to create moral views
Right.
that are less demanding?
Right. So one broad strategy here is to weaken the duty to promote good itself.
Okay.
So the most extreme end of this is libertarianism.
Okay.
So someone like Jan Narveson, for example,
Okay.
they essentially reject the idea of a general positive duty to promote the good altogether.
Okay, so it's all about negative duties.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So you're morally required not to steal from your neighbor,
Okay.
but you're not required to actively help them
Right.
if they fall on hard times.
Okay, so this is kind of as undemanding as it gets,
Pretty much, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would probably feel like this misses something,
Yeah. Yeah.
that it misses a sense of interconnectedness
Yeah.
and our responsibility to help others in need,
Right.
especially in those really dire situations.
Right.
It can feel very individualistic
It can, yeah.
and maybe not quite sufficient
Yeah.
when it comes to things like poverty and suffering.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, just that sense of how connected we should feel.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone needs to kind of grapple with on their own.
Right.
Where do they draw that line?
Yeah.
But recognizing this potential shortfall, there are other attempts
Yeah.
to weaken the duty to promote good,
Okay.
but still maintain it as relevant.
Okay.
One of those is satisficing duties.
Okay.
And this is something that's been explored by Michael Sloat and Thomas Herka.
Okay.
And the idea here is that an action is morally right as long as it produces a reasonable amount of good
Okay.
or achieves an outcome that's good enough.
Okay.
And this good enough could be defined by meeting some absolute threshold of well-being
Okay.
or by achieving a certain level of improvement over the initial situation.
Okay.
But the point is, it doesn't require you to always go for the absolute best outcome.
Okay, so you don't have to be constantly striving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this seems like it takes a lot of the pressure off.
It does.
But are there any kind of downsides to this?
Yeah. So, for example,
Yeah.
a satisficing view might imply
Yeah.
that it's morally okay for you not to further improve a situation
Yeah.
that has already reached good enough,
Right.
even if making that further improvement
Yeah.
would be pretty easy and cost you very little.
Right. Okay.
So similarly, it might allow you to stop
Yeah.
at, say, 2/3 of the potential improvement,
Okay.
even if reaching the full improvement requires very minimal extra effort.
Okay.
So a lot of people find this problematic
Yeah.
because it seems to allow us to forego these costless opportunities
Right.
to do more good.
Yeah.
And on the flip side,
Yeah.
depending on where that good enough threshold is set,
Right.
satisficing duties could still be pretty demanding
Yeah.
if reaching that level. It requires a lot of personal sacrifice.
Right.
So it doesn't inherently factor in the cost to the moral agent.
Right. So it's all about like what is good enough,
Right.
but it's not really about at what cost.
Exactly.
Okay, what's another way that people have tried to kind of
Yeah.
dial back the demandingness a little bit?
Well, another influential approach comes from Kant
Okay.
and his distinction between perfect and imperfect duties.
Okay.
So perfect duties are those that we have a strict and constant obligation to fulfill.
Okay.
So like the duty not to lie,
Okay.
but imperfect duties,
Yeah.
those require us to adopt a certain end,
Okay.
such as the well-being of others,
Okay.
but they give us more latitude in how and when we choose to fulfill that end.
Okay, so this sounds like it builds in some flexibility.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
if I have an imperfect duty to help others,
Yeah.
I'm not obligated to constantly be
Yeah.
doing charitable activities.
Right.
I can choose,
You have some choice.
the times and the ways in which I do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I guess this seems like it avoids the
Oh.
constant moral pressure.
Right.
But are there any downsides to this as well?
Well, if this latitude simply translates into sometimes choosing not to pursue the best outcome,
Yeah.
even when the cost to you is minimal,
Okay.
it risks running into the same objections as satisficing views.
Okay.
It's permitting us not to help,
Right.
even in low-cost situations.
Okay.
And some would argue that genuinely adopting the end of beneficence, as Kant suggests,
Yeah.
you would act to help
Okay.
in those low-cost cases.
Right.
And Kant's view also has this temporal dimension.
Okay.
So you might not need to be actively promoting the well-being of others at every moment,
Okay.
as long as you make a reasonable effort over the course of your life.
Right.
But again, this doesn't address the potential for those personal costs over a lifetime
Right.
to accumulate.
So it might not actually
Yeah.
reduce the overall burden.
It might not, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What else? What other strategies have been proposed?
Well, Lee Murphy has this cooperative view,
Okay.
and this view argues that our individual obligation to contribute to the common good,
Okay.
things like charity or addressing global issues,
Yeah.
is only as demanding as it would be if everyone else who could contribute
Right.
was also doing their fair share.
Okay.
So in other words,
Yeah.
you're only obligated to do your proportional part,
Okay.
assuming a baseline level of cooperation from others.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
like, why should I have to pick up the slack
Right.
if other people who are equally capable aren't doing their part?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And this seems very fair in a way.
Okay.
But I guess, are there situations where this would lead to like
Yeah.
counterintuitive or maybe even like
Yeah.
morally bad outcomes?
Well, yeah, what happens when others just can't contribute
Yeah.
because of genuine limitations?
Right.
Or, and this is probably more realistic, they simply won't contribute.
Right.
Right. Out of selfishness or apathy.
Yeah.
So, if two people are drowning and you're the only one who can save them,
Yeah.
a really strict cooperative view
Yeah.
might suggest that you're not required to do anything
Oh, wow.
because other people who could have prevented the situation
Yeah.
didn't do their part.
Yeah.
So that seems pretty counterintuitive.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right at all.
And on the other hand, it can be too permissive.
Okay.
Right. So imagine you and your neighbor could easily save someone from some serious harm
Okay.
for a total cost of $20.
Yeah.
But your neighbor refuses to pay their $10 share.
Okay.
This view might suggest
Yeah.
you have no obligation to spend the full $20 yourself,
Right. Even
though it's a relatively small cost to you
Right.
and a huge benefit to the other person.
Right. So it's almost like it's letting other people's
Right.
bad actions off the hook.
Right. It's weakening your individual duty
Right.
based on the actions or inactions of others.
Right. So I guess while the idea of shared responsibility is really appealing,
Yeah.
it seems like this could create some real loopholes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what's one more of these approaches?
Well, we should mention rule consequentialism.
Okay.
So this is a bit more complex.
Yeah.
But it says that the rightness of an action isn't judged by its consequences,
Okay.
but by whether it conforms to a rule
Okay.
that, if widely accepted and followed,
Yeah.
would tend to produce the best consequences. So it has some similarities
Yeah.
to indirect consequentialism,
Right.
but it places more emphasis on the social acceptance of these rules.
Okay, so instead of calculating each act's consequences,
Right.
we're following a set of established rules
Yeah.
that will lead to the best outcomes overall.
Right.
And how does this make things less demanding?
Well, by focusing on the consequences of rules being widely accepted,
Okay.
it can justify rules that are less demanding on individuals. Then, if everyone was always trying to maximize good in every single situation,
Okay.
so for example,
Yeah.
a rule that requires extreme self-sacrifice in all circumstances,
Okay.
that might be really impractical
Yeah.
because people are just unlikely to consistently follow it.
Right.
So that might lead to worse overall outcomes
Okay.
than a less demanding rule that people are more willing to follow.
Okay, so it's kind of a pragmatic.
Yeah, it's taking into account human nature.
Yeah.
It can also incorporate things like negative duties and rights
Okay.
more easily,
Yeah.
which can act as constraints
Yeah.
on always having to promote the good.
Right.